Hi guys, Arthur here from Homeowner DIY. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover common problems that you will run into with toilets. Now, for most residential toilets, they are a siphonic action toilet. What that means is when you flush the toilet, you're taking the water in the tank and then you're dumping it into the bowl, which will activate the siphon. So once the water is draining out of the bowl at the very end, you'll get a shot of air that goes down with it. That's that gurgling sound. So one simple way to find out if you have a partially blocked toilet is if you notice that you don't get a strong gurgling sound, if it's slow draining, it'll be barely anything. But it will be noticeable with a partial blockage. So what I'm going to do with this video is I'm going to show you guys two toilets. One is a modern toilet that I installed 10 years ago, and then the other toilet is a 7-year-old toilet that is original to this house. So there are some key differences on the two toilets, but the design of the toilet is basically the exact same thing. I mean, the design now is about 200 years old and it works fairly well. It's simple and it works. So I'll go over the two toilets, and then we'll see the differences. I'll go over the problems and also some things to avoid when doing or using your toilet. Alright guys, this is our modern toilet. So one of the key differences about this toilet and an older style, this has an elongated bowl. If you look above it, it looks like an oval shape. When I show you the other toilet, what you're going to see is a round shape. The reason that they changed the shape is because it makes it easier to wipe your bits opposed to a round toilet. So with our bowl here, what they actually do is they have an imprint of the actual siphon. So this is called an S-trap. So you have your bowl, and then when you flush, all the liquid goes around here and then down. And then this is, I don't know, something to equalize pressure. And then up here you can actually see where the water comes from the tank. So guys, this is a two-piece toilet. We have our tank here and then we have our bowl. You can get one-piece toilets. They work the same way. They're just much more difficult to install. So if you ever run into a problem where you have to shut water off or water is shut off, one way that you can flush your toilet is if you throw a bucket of water straight down the bowl, that'll activate the siphon. If you shut the water off, you also have one flush because the tank is still filled. So in this case here, we have our caps for our T-bolts on either side, a wax seal that seals between the flange and the bowl itself. And then at the end, we also caulk it down. Always leave the back here uncaulked, so if you develop a leak, then you'll be able to see the water. One reason why you may develop a leak over time is that the bowl isn't quite tightened down, or there's some play that's been developed, and then it starts to rock back and forth, and that can break the wax seal. All right, so we'll start with our stop. We have our stop here. We have our braided line here. As far as I know, your water connection will always be on the left side of the toilet. So in this particular case, this is a Mansfield. I bought this because it was on clearance. One thing that I realized after I bought it was it doesn't have a typical float valve, a typical flapper assembly. So you're going to see with the old toilets that I show next how these are different. But one other thing about toilets as well is they commonly have their manufacture date stamped on it, and this is right here. So that is, looks like April 26, 2010. And that makes sense because that's when I installed this. So in this case here, for some reason, this, instead of having a chain and a flapper, like you'll see with the other one, this one is different where the actual flapper here is integrated. The float assembly is the same. What they used to have is they used to have a rod with the big black ball over here. And if you had a runny toilet, what would happen is people would just bend the rod to push down the the float. So the float is here. So once the float is all the way up, it'll shut off the toilet. Guys, take note as well that this toilet has a liner, a foam liner. The reason for the foam liner is when the water is cold, the tank can start to sweat. You will see with the other toilet, it does not have a foam liner. And it's very common where they will have a water line imprinted somewhere. But if you don't have a water line imprinted, this here is your overflow tube. If you don't set the toilet correctly or something changes, what can wind up happening is the water will keep going down the overflow tube, and this is what we call a running or a runny toilet. But in this case here, the ball will go down, and then it's going to fill back up. So that is when the float here is at the top. It'll shut it off. And then you have water that also goes down your overflow tube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this fill back up, and then I'm going to adjust the float here so you can see what a running toilet will look like. And there is actually the water line. You can barely see it there, but there's the water line. So I will adjust this so the actual toilet will just spill over the overflow tube, and then we're going to have what's called a runny toilet. And this is so bloody easy to fix on your own. You definitely don't need to pay somebody to do it. Or I can actually turn this into a runny toilet, because I'd have to adjust the height of this, which I'm not going to do. But when your toilet is full, it should be dead silent. If you hear water running, then you have one of two problems. Either you have a runny toilet where the water is constantly going down your overflow tube, or you have a leaking flapper. So this has an integrated flapper, which is a little bit different. If I knew that this is the way Mansfield installed or did their design, I wouldn't have bought this thing, but it's too little too late. For me to fix this specific toilet, I would now need to go to the wholesaler and see what they have to address this problem. But you see the 1, 2, 3 bolts to tighten the tank down to the toilet. You can get a tank to bolt kit as well. But this is what a modern toilet looks like. I mean, this is the new style of flapper. This is a Fluid Master, but to install the Fluid Master or the float, all you have is you have your nut here. So you shut the water off, you undo the line, and then you will unscrew this. So this is like a cup drain for a kitchen, where you have a piece of rubber inside on the actual rod, post, whatever you want to call it. And then as you tighten this up, that'll suck the whole thing down. So if you have a leak coming from here, you may have a crack here, or it may be coming from here. So guys, really quickly, when you do your toilet line, you are not allowed to, it has to be hand tight. You can't put a wrench on it. If you have a leak, and then the insurance company finds out that you put a wrench on it, because they will look for marks, you will not be insured. So that's something you need to know. One other thing about a toilet or any other toilet is the little blue tablets that you can get that turns your water blue. Never use this type of chemical. It looks nice, but it eats away at your rubber seals. And it'll void any warranty on your toilet. What I will do right now for you guys really quickly is I'm going to show you a toilet auger, so you can see what it looks like. Now for the toilet auger, once again, it's just long enough just to get around through here. A toilet auger won't work if there's a toy or a bottle or something like that. And I just dealt with this. My neighbor had a problem, and I asked them if any kids were there. They said no, and I wound up finding a bottle in the toilet. And my toilet auger did not go anywhere. It was hitting a brick wall, and that made sense. I was hoping not to pull the toilet, but I had to. Alright guys, this is our toilet auger. So what you do is you put the very end up as far as you can go, and then what you can do is move this rod back and forth. That'll retract, and then move the cable. And then with the handle, you can spin it. This will clear anything that is in the actual the S-trap, but if you drop a bottle or a kid's toy, something like that, this is not going to work. but it's a great tool to have. I think it's about $25. This is your first stop to clearing a toilet before you have to pull it. So what we'll do now is we'll go and look at the 7-year-old toilet, and we'll see how times have changed. Alright guys, this is our 70-year-old toilet. So you see the shape of the bowl? This is called a round bowl. It's the same basic design. You have your T-bowl without a cover there. We have our shut-off. Now, there's a renovation done at some point where I can't even put my fingers underneath it. So what they did is they just put the new floor over the existing without actually doing anything. And then the toilet line is not a braided line, but everything here is pretty much the same design. Alright, so this is a very typical design. We have our flapper right here, and then we have our chain. Your flapper will wear out with time as well. So if you ever hear stuff like this, and then what's eventually going to happen is your fill valve is eventually going to kick on, because as it's leaking through the flapper into the bowl, this is going to be going down with the water level. So if your fill valve kicks on randomly, you may have a flapper problem, and it can be tougher to tell when the leak is so slow, such a weeping leak, that you can't hear anything. But like with anything else really in plumbing, it should be dead silent when nothing's being used. And then once again, we have our overflow tube, which is right here. And then you see our water going down our overflow tube as well. So guys, this really covers what you need to know for toilets. I mean, as long as your fill valve is set properly, which for the most part it will be already, then you won't have a problem. Now keep in mind, these things are mechanical, so they will wear out as well, so that might be a problem. I will get a video up on the channel as soon as I run into a problem with a toilet, but for the most part, what you see right here, this is going to be the actual design of most toilets. You can also sometimes, what will happen is the rod will break off, but for your chain here, just have it as no slack, and then you'll have a solid flush. But this here is the most common thing that you will see. Alright guys, so that concludes the video. So really for a toilet, the only problems that you're going to run into is a blockage, a worn out flapper that you'll eventually getting an intermittent cycling of the toilet because the water's slowly draining out. A running toilet where it's going over the overflow tube, that is really something that I don't think it really develops over time. It's possible, anything is possible, but I think really if you install a toilet and it's running, then it just needs to be set. So when I install a toilet, I will set the toilet as well just to make sure everything is fine. And then with the flow valve, the float valve is mechanical. It is eventually going to wear out where you're going to need to replace it. I think they're about $30, but for the most part, I mean, you should be able to do this on your own. And then the one other thing that you may develop over time, and this did happen on the 7-year-old toilet, is between the tank and the bowl, you can develop a leak. They call it a tank to bowl kit, where it has a rubber gasket, like a sponge, and then it has a couple bolts. And you can replace that as well. So for the most part, everything is standardized, except stuff like Mansfield. I believe Toto also has their own type of thing, but for the most part, it's all standardized. So guys, these toilets are a single flush. They're not a dual flush, or they'll have a different type of float valve. This is not a low flow design. This is just a typical. Like the toilet I installed in this bathroom was 10 years old, and I got it at a discount, so I didn't care about low flow or anything like that. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope the information here is going to help you fix any problems that may arise before you need to go and call someone. So guys, until the next project, please hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next project.